Hi, good day. Welcome to the session on parameters, the awesomeness of interchangeability. This session is targeted at beginner users of Tableau and will discuss how you may use parameters in Tableau to accomplish additional functionality. My name is Alex Lee. I'm the sales consultant in Asia Pac, based out of our Singapore office. So the agenda for today. In general, this session will briefly discuss what parameters are, why they are beneficial, and where you can apply them. I will also be spending a good amount of time demonstrating several use cases of parameters and finally leave you a homework challenge to try. Let's look at a simple example here. We may have a calculated field with conditional statement that returns true if the sales is above $500,000. Now, using parameter, we can allow users to dynamically set the value and filter the report or adjust the visual display accordingly. To make it even more flexible, we can create a parameter for the measure as well. So we are not just measuring sales, but also other KPIs such as profit, cost, etc. So this is just a simple example. Now basically what you can think of is that if you have a calculation that you currently hard code a fixed value or string, you have the potential to make it dynamic using parameters. Thus, potentially saves some time and effort and encouraging reuse of report assets. As stated earlier, parameters are dynamic values that can replace constant values in calculations, filters, and reference lines. Parameter can hold different types of values such as integer, float, date or time stamp, string, and Boolean values. They can be a single value, a predefined list of values, or a range of values depending on the data type. But exactly how do you interact with parameter? When a parameter is created, it has a parameter control that looks very similar to the dimension quick filter that you may be familiar with. Now you can control the appearance of the parameter control, right, such as the single value list, a slider, or perhaps type in or using a calendar picker. It all depends on the parameter data type. Parameters are considered global by default. Therefore, it is very flexible and it can be used anywhere in a workbook. It can act as a central control to filter multiple reports or data from multiple data sources. So let's go through a couple of use cases, through a demo, and hopefully through this you will be able to appreciate how you can make use of parameters in a number of situations. So let me turn over to this Tableau workbook. Here you can see a dashboard with 4 different charts in the dashboard, right? So I have a map on the top left. I have a bar chart here and a line chart down below, as well as a scatter plot. Now on the right, I have a number of parameters, filters that I have created. And to show you just a simple behavior, if I were to change, for instance, the target value here, that influences how the bar chart display looks like. I basically move the reference line for the sales target, and those products with sales below the target would appear red color. So this is a dynamic way of setting the display of a report influenced by parameter. I could also potentially change the details that I like to look at. For instance, if I just want to focus on the furniture product category, you see that all the other product category collapse, and I only look at these subcategories within the furniture. Same thing, if I were to change to technology, right, you see that effect. Now, how do I dynamically control the behavior of the hierarchy? This is another use case for parameter. Now, the next example is looking at dynamically selecting the type of chart I would like to look at. So here I have a map on the top left. If I want to change that to a bar chart, I could just use the radio button speaker. Next example, the line chart on the bottom left. Right, I have a moving average reference line here. Now, if I were to slide the moving average to change it to say a 5-period moving average, you see that effect is shown on the line chart. And I could also toggle to either display the line, the moving average line, or not to display it. So again, this sort of dynamic, changes of display and behavior on a report is very well suited for using parameter. Finally, I have a scatter plot on the bottom right. Here you can see the details shown with customer, and if I want to change that to say display by cities, in a very simple switch, I get that information displayed. Similarly, if I want to look at it by product, right, I have a scatter plot by individual products right now. Now, in a normal situation, when you're not using parameters, you will probably ended up with many different type of reports that you need to create to fulfill this analysis, right? So if you think about when you publish this dashboard into Tableau server, by incorporating parameters, this makes the whole user experience much more simpler and easy for the end users. So this is a demonstration of the parameters, and in the next couple of more minutes, we want to learn how we could create parameter for each of these. So let's go through the first exercise here. So earlier you've seen the bar chart, right, by product category and subcategory. Now, what I want to be able to show is to create a reference line using parameter where I could drag the reference values left and right, and at the same time influence which of the product categories should be highlighted red if it's below the reference line. So the way to create parameters is a two-step process, basically, to achieve the outcome. The first step is actually to create the parameter control itself. Now, to accomplish that, go to the dimension folder here and choose the drop down and create parameter. And you will want to basically set a value for the reference line. Right? So let me just call this as a sales target value. And to make it easy, I'm going to just use integer value for this. Now, there are different ways of setting the parameter value, right? I could use, all, which means depending on what the user type, or I can actually predefine a list of values that user can select. The third way is to actually define a range. So in this case, this is what I would like to use. So say a minimum range of 0 and a maximum range of, let's say, 1.5 million. And then perhaps let's set this parameter by a value of 5,000. Okay, once the parameter control is created, they appears in the parameter section here, and I should be able to see my parameter sales target, right? So similar to the way you would show the quick filter for dimension by right-clicking on that particular parameter and show parameter control, right? You have that parameter displayed on the view. Now I could drag the slider, say change it to something like 515,000. You will notice there is no effect to the report, right? So that's where the second step needs to come in. And the second step is essentially to throw in a calculation into the report where that calculation will be influenced by the parameter. So let me create a calculation. And this will be the sales target, KPI. And what I want to do is to create a conditional statement, right? So if the sum of sales is above or equals to the parameter that I've created earlier, then let me just call that above. Else, it's considered below the target. N, right? So I have now a sales target KPI, which I would like to put that into the color code. And I can see if I were to drag the sales target right now, right? So I can see those bars that are below that values would now turn into orange color. So let me perhaps adjust the colors to, if it's above, we want to make it green, and if it's below, let's make it red. Okay. So another step I want to do here is to be able to display the parameters values as part of a reference line. So right-click on the axis, add reference line, and as for the value, I will want to choose sales target as the reference. Okay, so now we have it. So this is how we accomplish the first report that you've seen earlier. Let's move on to the second exercise. Now, in this exercise, we sometimes, have a rank chart where, we sort a customer list based on a particular KPI. So in this case, we have the most profitable customers as the top of the report, all the way down to those customers that are essentially giving us a loss. So that's a long list of report, and I really want to accomplish, a top and most profitable customer, as well as perhaps a bottom and bottom and loss customers, these profitable customers. So how do I make use of parameter control so that I can let users select, perhaps say a top 10 customers and a bottom 15 customers? So let's see how we can accomplish this. Again, if you recall, it's a two main step process. First is for us to create a parameter control. So in this particular case, I will need to create two parameter controls, one for the top customers. And again, I will be using an integer value. Let's give up to maybe 30, top 30 customers that the user can select. Repeat the same step for the bottom. So let's say we have selections for up to 40 bottom customers that the user can select. Right, so I have the bottom M here. Let me turn on the parameter control and the top M. All right. So the next step I want to do is to influence how the report looks like. So essentially, we want to filter the customers based on the parameter values that we've set. So let me just go to customer name filter, and under the top filter, we say that we would instead of filtering by top 10, I want to filter that by top N. Okay, apply that. Right. So now I've basically set the behavior effect influenced by the top N parameter. If I would change this to, let's say, top 10 customers, right? We get to see the top 10 customers display immediately. Now, on the same token, I will need to, do that for the bottom customers as well. But before I do that, I want to create a set for the top N customer. So let's call this a top N set. Okay, and let me change the filter now to repeat the same step for bottom. Okay, so if I were to drag, say, to bottom 20 customers. So these are essentially the list of 20 customers that is least profitable. So similarly, I want to create a set for this and call this the bottom M set. Okay, so I have a way of influencing, looking at the bottom customers or the top customers, but I want to be able to have this effect on the same chart itself. So to do that, I would actually need to create a combined set by combining the bottom N and the top N sets into one, right, through the set union. So let me call this as top N and bottom N customers. And the simple last step I need to do is just to replace the filter with this combined sets filter. Right, so now we have that top and bottom chart. All right, so let's see what we can do further with parameter. Now, with the line chart that you've seen earlier for moving averages, okay, we are going to create a parameter to control the moving average period as well as display or not display the moving average depending on the toggle. Okay, so same thing. To create this effect, the first step is to create a parameter control. So here we want to define a number as the moving average period. So let's call this moving average period. Okay, so again, just going to make use of lists to make it easy. So let's give the user the ability to set up to 24 months of moving average, or 24 weeks of moving average. Okay, so that's already cool. Just change the name. Okay, so let's see. All right, so here you have it, moving average periods. Now, the next step is that we want to basically change the line for this moving average and basically use the formula for to be based on the moving average period parameter that we created. So I'm going to edit the table calculation for the moving average. Okay, so instead of hard coding the value 2 here, I could actually change that to be based on the parameter. All right, so now if I were to drag, modify the period, right, you could see the moving average line is changed accordingly. Okay, so this is great. Now, the next effect we want to do is to give users the ability to display or not display the moving average line. Okay, so to do that, I will need to create a calculated field here. And I'm going to show you another place where we could create a parameter. So really this particular calculated field is a show or hide control. And what we want to do is maybe give a 0 and 1 value in a parameter control. Right, so let's create a parameter for that. Show or hide parameter. So I'm just going to use integer value. So it's a list of 0 and 1. So assuming if it's a 1, right, we want to be able to show the moving average line. And if it's a 0, do not show. Okay with that. So basically, this is a condition. If show height parameter is equals to 1, then display the moving average measure. All right, so now we can replace the moving average measure with the new calculated field that I created, which is a show height And at the same time, I need to turn on show and hide parameter control as well. Alright. So if I were to toggle this, right, to do not show moving average, right, we can see, yep, that line disappears. Okay, so similar to quick filter, we could modify the control display. So instead of using a compact list, perhaps it's easier to use just a radio button for the end user's toggle. Right, so here you have it. So that concludes exercise number 3. Let's look at the next challenge. Okay, back to the bar chart. Now, earlier on, you have seen in my demonstration, when I pick a particular product category, I want to be able to, display that and collapse the other categories that are not concerned to me, to save the screen space. So how do we dynamically control this behavior using a parameter? Okay, so I'm going to create a string parameter to accomplish this. So let's call this category parameter. So the data type will be a string, and I'm going to define a list for this. Okay, so I have furniture, office supplies, technology. I also must give user an option if they choose to display all the subcategories for all the product categories. So I will have to have an option for all here, as well as an option where perhaps only the product categories are displayed and no subcategories is required. So that will be when none is selected. All right, so I have a list of 5 different values here, and I'm going to set a calculation to see how I can influence this. So on the calculation section, create a calculator field. Okay, so let me call this Selective Category. So this will be a conditional field where if my category is equals to all, or product category dimension has a value that is equal to the category parameter, then shows the product subcategory. Otherwise, I just want to see the product category. All right. So the way you would interpret this is if the user selects a particular category, right? So that means the product category dimension will be related to that value. So like office supplies or technology or furniture, right? In that circumstance, I want to be able to display the product subcategory hierarchy. Similarly, if the user were to choose all as a value, then I want to display the product subcategory as well. Under other circumstances, that means if the user select none, then I will only be displaying the product category information. So to have this effect, similarly, I need to turn on the parameter control as well as replacing the product subcategory with the calculation that we created earlier. So that's selective. Right, so it will be under the dimension section. Yeah, so I've got selective category here. So I'm going to replace this with the product subcategory side. Okay, so as we can see, if I change to technology category, right, I can only see the product subcategory for technology. If I set to all, I've got all the subcategories. Set to none, then it will only display the 3 product categories that we have. All right, so I can use the compact list, or similarly, I could also just make use of the gray button selection. All right, so that's selective hierarchy using parameter. Okay, so another examples of using parameter is that if we have multiple reports of a similar format, so except the difference is that we are looking at it by different dimensions, then that is also a good candidate where we could apply parameters to show the effect. So in this example, we want to use a parameter to allow users to toggle between the region dimension, a product category, an order priority, or a ship mode dimension. All right, so again, the concept is very similar. Just create a parameter, and this will be a string parameter for category, sorry, for the dimension. Okay, so I could just hard code each of the dimension name. Alternatively, I'd like to show you a trait that sometimes I use. Instead of typing the full dimension name, I could actually just use ABCD. What essentially is happening here is that the actual values that Tableau store is the one on the left side, right? The value field column here. And the one that users see is actually on the right side, the display as column. So I can let users see the values such as region, product category, and so on. But to make it easy in my conditional statements, I can just only reference the ABCD value. This may not make for a good documentation practice, but it is one easy trick to kind of speed through the steps. All right, so let me turn on that parameter control and change that to single value. All right, so I've got the 4 dimensions defined here. So next thing, what I want to do is to create a calculated view. Okay, let me just call this selective dimension as well. Okay, so in this particular case, I will need to use a case logic rather than an if then else, because I need to be able to define depending on the value. So case dimension when it is A, which is when user selects region, then the dimension will relates to region. Okay, so I could just copy and place this. So if it is the next one, that will be a product category dimension. And if it's a third selection, then that should relate to order priority. Finally, we'll change that to ship mode for the last option. And with that. All right, so as you should know by now, right, unless I have that calculation in my view, by changing the value in the parameter, it's not going to impact the report. So in this case, I will need to replace selective dimension, replace the product category with the selective dimension in my row section. All right, so now I should be able to toggle between different dimensions easily. Right, so that concludes exercise 5. I'm just going to do one more exercise, and we can conclude this session. So in the beginning, when I show you the dashboard, right, I have one parameter that allows me to toggle between the bar and the map chart. Okay, let's take a look at how we can accomplish that. Right, so here I have a bar chart and I have a map. Okay, so the way to accomplish this is, again, I need to create a parameter. So let's do that. Okay, so let's call this select chart parameter. Use a string of values. Right, so you just call this A and B. So it is A. Let's see a bar chart. And if it's B, let's see a map. Okay, so let me turn on select chart control. All right, so I believe here I have predefined images. Okay, so similarly, I need to create a calculator view to effect this. So I will call this a select chart control. Right, so again, it's a simple case statement. So case select chart when A Alright, so I've got a select chart control here. What I want to do is basically to filter this and say that this only works for bar chart. Right, so when I select a bar chart, right, it displays the bar chart. If I select map, you will see that this goes away. Right, so on the same token, I'm going to apply this to my map report as well. So I can reuse the same parameter, and this is where I mentioned that parameter is global by nature. So I will now create another calculated field of the same. So this should be the case. Oops, not sure what happened. Then map and right. So see my select chart. Okay, so drag the select chart control into that, and I should be looking at a map. So let me just toggle that out first. Okay, there's my select chart control. Alright, so I need to change this to a map value before I can filter that. So drag the select chart into the filter and choose this as a map. Alright, so again, similarly, if I change that to bar chart, I will not be able to see the map. So the next thing I want to do is basically to combine them into a dashboard. So let's create a dashboard. And this will be my, so before I do that, I want to create a vertical section and drag my bar chart as well as my map into it. Alright, so let me just hide the title. And just to extend this to fit all both view. Okay, so that's essentially the effect. So now if I would change this to map, right, so I get to see the map, and if I change that to bar chart, it toggles back to the bar chart. Right, so similarly, if I want to make this easy for users, change that to a radio button control, and easily they can toggle. All right, so when all of that is done and you put them into a single dashboard, right, you get the effect that I've just shown in the beginning. So those are a few different ways of using parameters to accomplish a number of things. So let me just quickly summarize this. So what is parameter? Right, parameter empowers users with dynamic inputs that it can be used to replace a constant. So like I said, wherever you see that there is a constant that you have put in today, that is a good candidate for using parameter to make it dynamic. Right, and parameters can be used in calculations, right, in filters, in reference lines, as you've seen my demonstration. Why do you want to use parameters? right? Parameters give you an excellent level of flexibility and interactivity. Parameters is also very efficient because it doesn't hit the database when it renders the value. Okay. And finally, right, what kind of values can we set as a data type for parameters, right? It supports integer values, floating values, Boolean, strings, dates, and so on. Okay. So, right, so we are almost up to the hour. What I do really like to do is actually kind of leave you with a homework exercise. Here is an example, right? We have a crosstab report. I'm just going to toggle back to my workbook to show you what I meant by this. So here is the crosstab report that I have. Now, what I like is to have a parameter that allows me to change how I summarize this table, right? So I want to be able to see, for instance, have to look at, calculating the percentage based on the column values or based on the row values, right, across or down, or perhaps by individual section, right? So here, for each product categories, I have the values add up to total 100%. Okay, so how do you accomplish this? By using parameters. Okay, so that will be the homework exercise for all of you to try. And as a bonus, right, if you manage to get this done, email back to me, and I'll give you a freebie, right? A Tableau learning resource workbook that allows you to have a continual learning with Tableau and hopefully, improves your skills much further. So with that, let me end my session. Thank you very much for your attention, and hope that you enjoy the remaining of this conference. Thank you.